I want to welcome everyone to the Great Wardens Project Second Leadership Summit, Building Great Wardens Leadership for Change. If you were able to join us for our last Leadership Summit, welcome back. If you were not, welcome for the first time. I'm going to go over just a little bit of Zoom tech stuff. I'm sure most of us are pretty familiar with using Zoom at this point, but for those who aren't or need a reminder, the bottom of your screen, there should be a little tab that looks like this. To mute yourself, you want to go ahead and click and unclick that button to mute or unmute yourself. If you would like to turn your video on, you can use that here. If you have any questions or just want to say hi or add a thought or what have you, you can just click on this chat button and go ahead and put that in there. We will have time at the end to do a lot of Q&A. So if you post up a question, it doesn't get answered right away, don't worry, we'll keep track of them and refer back to them at the end of today's session. So again, we are from the Great Wardens Projects, and I'll do some introductions really briefly, but I do want to just talk a little bit about what the Great Wardens Project is. Our project is really dedicated to providing mentorship and training to develop bold prison leaders and build a corrections culture based on safety and dignity. We have a couple of core beliefs. The first being that wardens and superintendents have a responsibility to promote safe, secure, and healthy corrections facilities, and that advocates and prison leaders can work together to reimagine how corrections facilities operate and shape a new generation of committed corrections professionals. That second part is important to me as an advocate. So I'm down there at the bottom. My name is Jessica Sedano-Seifel. I'm a senior program director with Just Detention International. I'd like to introduce our two Great Wardens Project task force members that are going to be leading the conversation today. Eric, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself? Eric, are you with us?
Looks like he's muted, Jessica.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh,
Unmuted. Technology, right?
I know. No, don't worry about it. You're here. That's what matters.
Yeah. So Eric Aldridge out here in Virginia. Look forward to our dialogue today. Hope we can engage in some very thought and moving ideas.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then we have our second speaker with us today. Lynn, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Lynn Bissonette. I'm retired from the Massachusetts Department of Correction after a 33-year career, 23 of which served as a superintendent at mostly at MCI Framingham, although I was a warden at 5 facilities during my tenure. And I'm really happy to be here today and to help shape the future.
I love it. And I think it is worth saying, like so many formerly retired folks, there's a formerly in there too, because you're currently you were invited back, right, to work at your facility again, right?
I was, yes.
So you're sort of semi-retired, I suppose.
Semi-retired.
Wonderful. And we do have a bunch of other folks that are on our task force, wardens from around the country. Some of them are in this session right now. If that is you, go ahead and give us a hello in the chat. We're so happy to have you. And this goes for our task force members that are in the audience. Please feel free to contribute any thoughts or feelings or what have you. If you are a warden out there and you like what we're doing and you're interested in being a part of the Great Wardens Project, I will be showing our contact information at the end of ways that you can join in and help build these conversations. So before we get started into our session today, I do want to just share why it is that we're talking about the stuff that we're talking about. And so thanks to our partners at NAS, we sent out a survey to wardens and superintendents almost a year ago. It was in the spring. Chances are there are many folks here that filled this out. And one of the questions that we asked was about topics that folks were interested in learning more about, talking more about. And these were sort of the top 3 subjects that came up in those surveys. One of them being the differences between leading a facility and managing one. That was something that we talked about in our last leadership summit. The recording for that is available on our website, which I'll share later. The second one was about developing a facility vision, which is what we're going to be talking about today. And then finally, getting buy-in and support from staff to reach goals, which we'll also be talking about a little bit today, and we'll focus on more specifically in our upcoming leadership vision. So, this is important for me because I want to share that these are topics that, you all in the field shared with us were important. And if there are topics that aren't here that you feel like I would really love to be a part of a conversation about this, share that with us. We'd love to know what folks want to talk more about. Another question that we asked folks in the field was about whether or not wardens and superintendents felt empowered to make changes necessary to improve their facility culture, if they felt like it was within their power to make those kinds of changes. And by and large, most folks felt like, yeah, I may be bound by budgets and policies and all of these things, but I still feel empowered to make positive changes, which I think is a really wonderful thing. So I want to start things off with the discussion about this tricky thing called hope. So I think, given all the challenges that we as people have been experiencing these past few years, and you all in particular, as corrections leaders, hope can really often feel like it's in short supply. And I want to talk a lot about hope today, actually, because I think it's really relevant to these conversations about visions and goals and wanting things for the future. And so for my two task force members, Lynn and Eric, I would love to know your thoughts on what is your hope for the future of the field of corrections? What do you want to see this field be like in 5, 10, 20 years?
So I guess I'll jump in here. Again, my name is Lynn Bissonette. I'm former warden within the Massachusetts Department of Correction. And I guess my hope for the future is a heavy, heavy reliance on research-based programs and treatment models. I think that, based on the amount of money that is being spent in corrections, we need to be able to, implement those programs that work. And by working, I mean reducing recidivism and violence and recriminalization. And, in line with that, I think if we include researchers and community partners, because we don't have all the answers, especially as it relates to, up and coming research. I was a warden for 23 years and, we don't get the amount of training that I think we deserve based on the amount of money spent on us. So I think, it's really time to, bring those folks in, partner with researchers, partner with community-based providers, and help us, let them help us. And also, provide opportunities for researchers to research us and what we're doing and what's working. And I think with that comes a kinder, gentler corrections environment. And I think that would have a heavy, heavy impact on recidivism rates.
I love that, especially as someone from a community-based organization. I absolutely love the idea of partnering with corrections and having it not be adversarial, right? That there are resources out there that folks in corrections may not have even known existed in their own communities, right? And that inviting those organizations, those outside partners in, can make both sides better, more richer. Absolutely. Eric, same question for you, please.
I would have to follow a lot with what Lynn said and add to that is, one comment or vision that, I've had is we hope to work ourselves out of a job in corrections, meaning that someday, I know this is idealistic, but, we don't have the need for correctional, detention / jail facilities. Again, that's ideal. We're always going to have people making mistakes, but it goes right back to what we started out, and that's hope. One of the pieces I think is critical in building on what Lynn was sharing is involving all the stakeholders, researchers, and part of those researchers getting the inmates involved in what works for them. having the inmates engaged in programming, facilitating programs, co-presenters, etc. within the facility, I found being very effective. When we engage the population, they feel valued, and then you get more participation. You get those that are resistant to come into the program because now they see a peer that might be presenting or facilitating a group, not just an outside volunteer or staff member, but somebody that they can relate to. So I really am engaged, or I'm very invested in having the inmates participate in building what programs are provided for their improvement.
I love that. I love that. And, again, as someone with an advocacy background who has worked at nonprofits forever, I really understand that vision of wanting to work yourself out of a job. And I think that's something that's a really sort of almost radical thing to say, right? That you want to see your field disappear one day, that you want to see that there isn't a need for victim advocates anymore, for example. Like what an amazing world that could be, right? And maybe it might never happen, at least not in our lifetimes, but that we can all still work towards that vision. So for folks that are listening, I'd like to ask the same question of you all. And so if anyone is feeling brave enough to unmute themselves and join the conversation, I would love to hear your voices. If not, please use the chat. I would love to know what you all hope for the future of the corrections field.
I'll go from Delaware.
Wonderful. Welcome.
How's everybody doing? I think one big thing for us, and I'm sure affects everyone across the nation, is staffing, right? Security staffing, behavioral health staffing, nursing. We're in a staffing crisis. So I guess it's my hope, because again, without the appropriate staffing and the appropriate security, substance use disorder treatment doesn't happen, mental health treatment doesn't happen, CBT, all these great things that we're doing, education, college classes, all these things that we know are going to help recidivism. Nothing happens unless we have security and we have order in our facilities. And that starts with our correction officers and having well-trained, well-prepared correction officers, and correction officers that aren't burnt out from working a lot of overtime and a lot of mandatory overtime. So I guess, looking at this, it's my hope for the future that correction officers are compensated, that they're recognized, and viewed as professionals, not guards, that are easily manipulated, or a lesser than a police officer or something of that nature. It's my hope that we look at these as very dynamic jobs, which they are, and it takes a very, very, very resilient professional to be a correction officer. So I guess it's my hope, and in the future that the correction officer is viewed as a very resilient professional job. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Sure
I think it does. Totally. Lynn, were you going to share any thoughts about that? Did I interrupt you?
Yeah, I think, what he had to say is so valid. If correction officers don't feel valued, a lot of hiring and when I was a superintendent occurred by way of mouth. And so, cousin, brother, nephew, uncle talked about the field. And I can imagine now with COVID that has even, worsened exponentially for facilities that are struggling with staffing. And, you know, I guess my point is, if we get everyone working towards the same goal, we can, you know, enhance that environment. But I absolutely agree. Unless you have adequate staffing to run programs, you know, you're gonna start in a hole, a big hole.
Yeah, absolutely. Does anyone else have any thoughts or would like to share, either in the chat or with your voice, what your hope is for the future of the corrections field? No one? Am I gonna have to call on people? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna call on anyone, even though I want to. But if something does strike you and you want to share anything, please feel free to put that in the chat. You know, we want this to be a conversation. I want you all to feel like you can raise your hand and speak up. This isn't a training. We really want this to be a discussion here.
I do have something to say.
Yes, welcome. Please share.
This is Nahara from Las Vegas.
Hello.
One thing that I would hope to see is all of us working together, because I think in correctional systems, you know, a lot of times, you know, something that works for another prison in a different state may work for my state as well. And I think that by sharing ideas in systems, it's going to be easier for all of us to actually see what actually works in your facility. So I think that I'm hoping to see all of us working together, not just for our facility, but for a better correctional system in the whole United States.
I love that. Yeah, thank you. And that's part of what the Great Wardens Project is all about, is creating opportunities like this to bring folks together that may not have had an opportunity to connect before and to share ideas like you just described. Any other? I saw some folks unmute themselves, so I didn't know if they wanted to share something.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, I'm Emory Morton from Carteret, Newport, North Carolina. And
oh, you're one of the crew here, the North Carolina crew.
Yeah. Well, that topic about staff and retention, that's a problem for everybody. But what our team has done here, because of this problem, is we show our staff we love them here and we appreciate them. We don't just show them, we don't just tell them that, we show them. And with COVID-19 and running a prison would challenge the day-to-day operations. My management here and our goal is to show the staff that to create a more pleasant work environment, to show them that we feel appreciated, and the supervisors make them feel appreciated. And then we don't go to line up and talk down to our staff. We go to line up and tell them we love them and we appreciate them. And it's created a positive environment here. We have a very high morale. I have one of the lowest vacancy rates, and the turnaround has stopped. But everybody's having problems with staff retention. We can hire all the staff and pay them what they want, but with poor leadership and poor management, we can't retain them, and they're leaving. So I like to use the acronym LOVE. You know, listen, observe, value, and experience. One team, one mission. We all have to be together, and I think it's this COVID has put a strain on everybody, plus running a prison. So I just want to throw that out there. You know, we talk a lot about retention of staff. If we don't show our staff we love them and appreciate them, you can pay them all you want to, but you're not going to retain them. So I just put that out there to all the managers. Your staff is the ones that are boots on the ground. They're the ones that make the mission happen. We can come up with all the rules and regulations, but if the staff there ain't there to put them in place, everything else breaks down. As far as the offender issue, my mantra to my staff is a more informed inmate is a more manageable inmate. Cut down on all them rumors and conspiracy theories. And if there's any rule that comes down from the top, I make it mandatory for the ward, myself or the associate warden to go to the dorms to make sure they know where it's coming from and they don't take it out on staff. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I love my staff and I appreciate them. And I love my team, North Carolina, one team, one mission. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's actually a couple of questions that are for you in the chat, if you don't mind. What was the E in love again? It was experience, correct?
Love is L for listen, O for observe, V for value, E for experience. And it goes into lead on purpose, promoting leadership principles in product management. I study a lot of stuff on the web. Our commissioner sends us a lot of leadership. Mr. Biller sends us a lot of leadership, and I also study on the web about leadership, and I try to create that environment at work and take all that good stuff we get sent. And because leaders are not born, leaders are made. And so I'm just saying, I've learned a lot of tough lessons. I've been a manager for a long time, but if you don't manage your facility with your staff, it breaks the whole system down. You can have all the programs in place, like we talked about security. But I'm gonna tell you something. I've seen them pay people high money, but if you get one bad manager in there, one supervisor, you can tear it all to pieces. So that goes a long way for staff.
Yeah. And there's actually another question for you, if you wouldn't mind just sharing some examples or some of the ways that you show your staff that you appreciate them, that you value them.
Well, I'm gonna say this. I'm an old country guy, but we eat like a Baptist church around here. Like today, me and my partner went to lunch today, and we went and bought everybody ice cream. Just that little bit of ice cream just goes a long way on the post. On a hot day when they're wearing their ballistic vests, me and my partner go gets everybody Gatorade. Water goes a long way, but that quench and Gatorade is just something else. I go to line up and I go on the ground. I don't sit in the office. I do searches with them. We go down there and show them. And I promise, I got one rule at Carteret. No offenders allowed to intimidate my staff. If they do, they come up here to see me for special rehabilitation on the attention I can give. I don't let no inmate, no gang member run my prison. And I let the inmates know and the staff who runs this prison. And we're their support group. I meet them from day one when they walk in the building and tell them I love them and I appreciate them. And we're here for them. We're the support group. Offender's job is to divide and conquer us. So from day one, I'm engaged with new employees and I tell them they're never going to be alone. We're always here for them. And they know that, and they walk the extra mile. And like I tell my managers, I can't give them more money. That's tied to legislation. But if they want to go see their son play t-ball, if that mama wants to go to that birthday party, I don't care what they got to do. If I got to work, they're going to go see their son play t-ball, and that mama's going to go to that birthday party. It's the small things that make the difference. And when I tell my staff I got an open door policy, I got an open door policy, and I'm not God in the room. We make important decisions. Everybody's a part. Stakeholders are staff too. Sometimes it looks good on paper, but the staff's the ones got to put it in place. And we don't know if it interrupts feeding, what it's going to cause. So stuff like that, the buy-in, not just from the offender population. I do that too. I go down there to the offender population and get them to have buy-in. I do everything I can to take the heat off the staff because they're suffering. The stress that we're dealing with right now with COVID is even taking a toll on the top leadership. I go home constantly with stress, but I manage it and we work together as a team. Can't do it alone. Nobody can do it alone.
Right.
It's the little things that means a lot to them staff members. Just talking to them about how their day, not about work. How's your kids doing? How's your family doing? We'll get to work in a minute. We pray when we eat dinners. We do morale, dinners, snacks, anything we can. It ain't that much money to go buy a pack of 24 pack of ice creams. I spent $4. But them staff were tickled to get them an ice cream sandwich a while ago. I called each one of them up there and said, get you ice cream. It's the little things that count. And they know you love them and you know you appreciate them. And you know you're going to be there by their side. And that's the little things that make the morale the difference. And people's going to make mistakes. We've got to get out of that mantra writing everybody up, 18-month rent warnings. That just tears people down. People are going to make mistakes. It depends on what the mistake is. If they cross the red line, that's different. I'm like a father. I'll hold them accountable. And when it's time to do disciplinary, we'll do disciplinary. But sometimes a little swift kick in the rear end gets them in the right direction. And that's the little stuff too. I tell them I'm gonna be upfront with them, they be upfront with me.
Yeah.
But I've learned a lot, and staff can make you or break you. And some of these prisons are suffering across the United States. And all of us on this conference know that not every leader is a good leader. Not every manager is a good manager. It don't take but one manager to ruin it for the rest of us. So I hold my managers accountable, and we talk positive stuff. We don't go and talk negative. Some people use lineup as a forum to talk negative, and you can't do that either. Don't punish everybody for one. Hold that one accountable, not the mass. And that's another thing we do here. So that's the little stuff we do. And like I tell you, I tell my staff I love them, but we don't just tell them that, we show them.
Yeah.
And it makes I got officers driving by 3 prisons to come work for me. And that's just the way we are here at Carteret.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Really appreciate it. A lot of what you're describing are some of the things that are on this next slide here. You're talking about what makes a strong leader, and leadership is a little bit of an art, right? Like there are more qualities than just what's here on this slide. But these are some of the things that we've sort of identified in our conversations are some of the essential components to what makes a strong leader. Honesty and integrity, some of the stuff that you were just talking about, is absolutely key, right? You have to say what you mean, do what you say, all that stuff. Inspiring staff, you talked about that a little bit as well, making sure that staff feel like they're here not just to do a job, right, but that they're here to fulfill a mission, and that they're part of a larger group of folks that are doing the same work. Obviously, effective communication, right, that you're able to demonstrate to others what you're trying to say and that they understand it, and vice versa as well, right? That you're also making sure that you are understanding what folks are telling you or some of the problems that are going on or some of the successes that you want to celebrate. And then also what we're going to be talking about a lot today is about creating the vision, right? And establishing what it is that you want to see out of your staff, what it is that you want folks to feel like when they enter the facility. That you're creating that by modeling it, by communicating it. And then ultimately, a good leader is someone who challenges the status quo. And what I mean by that is not someone who burns the system down so much as someone who says, well, why not? Why can't we do that? Why can't it be that way? What if it were that way? Someone who's able to ask some of those questions to get folks thinking a little bit differently, and folks, more willing to experiment with something or to do what we call in the project intelligent risk taking. Folks are taking risks every single day. Can those risks be intelligent and thoughtful? And how do we minimize, the fallout from potential risks? Those are some of the things that we've identified that are really important to making a strong leader. And today we're going to focus on creating that vision, what that looks like. So, I can't speak for wardens, right? So I'm sort of parroting things that I've heard from some of our task force members that things in the corrections field have changed a lot in the past 20, 30, however many years, that the expectations of what the public expects of corrections has changed. And so much of the time, when a leader asks, okay, who wants change to happen? Everyone has a complaint. Everyone has identified something. I wish this were different, or I wish this were different. But then if you ask, okay, well, who wants to actually be a part of that change? Who actually wants to be the change? Folks are a little more reluctant to wanting to actually change any of their own behaviors or thoughts. And so much of what a leader's job is ushering folks through that change, right? A leader draws power from their character, from their commitment to the cause, as opposed to from their rank. One of the things that we've heard a lot is, a leader could be a line staff, could be a sergeant, could be a warden, could be anybody. It's not so much about the title you have as much as it is about the influence that you have, and your ability to gather folks around a particular vision for the future. Someone who motivates, who inspires, who empowers others to grow as leaders as well. And that's something that we've talked a lot about on this project, is sort of passing the baton, if you will, to the next generation of corrections leaders. And are we empowering them to grow the same way that we were empowered by those that came before us? And so a leadership vision is really just, well, let me backtrack a little bit. All of your agencies and maybe some of your facilities have individual missions and visions. And it may be that those missions and visions really speak to you, and there's no need to even think about your own personalized leadership vision. If that's not the case, maybe developing your own vision of what you want your facility to look like can provide some inspiration, some motivation. It can offer clarity, focus, and purpose. And it also recognizes the impact that, the decisions that you make as a leader have on staff, their families, incarcerated people, their families, and the community as a whole, right? And it also informs the individual goals that you have, as well as the facility goals that you have. And I'm actually going to invite all of us here to sort of brainstorm a little bit of, what is a mission? What is a vision? This is sort of the formula that we've come up with. There is no one definition, right? But if we can identify what our values are as a corrections field or as a leader, what you believe in, what is important to you. And then the next step would be the mission. What are you doing? What actions are you taking to demonstrate what those values are, right? You add those things up with the goal of getting to your vision, what you hope for. What does success look like? What changes because of the decisions that you're making, because of the leadership that you're demonstrating? And so I want to invite folks, in the chat, or again, if you want to unmute yourself, and of course, Lynn and Eric, please share as well. What are some of the values that you all, as leaders, as corrections leaders, have? What do you believe in? What is important to you all as corrections leaders? And Lynn and Eric, I'll invite one of you two to start, whoever wants to go first.
Well, I think Embry hit a lot of things that you could lump under values. And one of them is value. Even the person that was, I forget their name, from Delaware, talking about staff being valued. We have to, unless a staff member, doesn't matter what position they're in, unless they feel valued, it's hard for them to show value towards others. So a person has to internalize that they're valued in order to share and respect others as though they're significant and valued. So, that's one of the biggest things when building your values, is you got to put in there, by involving everyone, that each person is valued, regardless of rank, position. It's down to the person. Every person is valued. So that's one of the components I think is really important in building your values, is to ensure that, hey, everybody here first starts out as being valued.
Lynn, was there anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say, from my perspective, having a safe and humane environment for staff and inmates is key. Nothing can occur positive unless everybody feels safe. So, I think if you start with that environment, and several people have pointed to it about feeling like a family, or we're a family and we take care of each other. That's creating that humane environment from which people can grow, both staff and offenders.
Wonderful. And North Carolina wardens, you've been called on, but not by me. Apparently you all worked on developing your core values pretty recently. I wonder if some folks wouldn't mind sharing what some of the core values are that you came up with. Maybe they're written somewhere in front of you. If you want to enter them into the chat as we're talking, that would be great. I'll let you all find those. But in essence, every sort of mission statement can be broken down this way. You can look and see, okay, the values have to be in there somewhere. The actions that you're taking have to be in there somewhere. And any good statement would also have what success is going to look like. So I'm going to pull up a poll question for folks. And if there are any tech issues, let me know. But you should see a little screen pop up that asks, as a warden or superintendent, I refer frequently to my agency's mission statement, whether that's if you're trying to make a decision and you're not sure where to go, or if you're maybe having conversations about expectations with folks or celebrating successes, that you refer back to the language that's in your mission statement. This is anonymous, so no one's going to know if you put "I never look at it." It's totally fine. But I'll give folks just a minute or two to answer in here.
Jessica, does the camera come to me if I unmute? Or what
I
do I
see.
need to?
I see you. I love the bow tie. Oh, I can't see that though. The camera is a little to your left.
Can you see it now?
I can see a paper, but I can't see what's written on there.
Okay, this is a license plate that was given to all of the wardens in North Carolina. And it says, protect, respect, integrity and innovation, duty and diversity, and excellence.
Ooh.
Those are the core values for North Carolina. Since none of my people spoke up.
We just got one. We just got one now. They found it. Mr.
Okay.
Morton put in his
Of
thoughts.
course. I would know Emery would do that.
Thank you so much for sharing those. I imagine that was something that everyone worked on together collectively to develop those. Is that right?
Yeah, when we started the project about 2 years ago now to write a strategic plan, one of the things we did was we started out with focus groups to include line staff. And I think we gathered about 400 people totally. And then we crystallized it down to a few after about 6 months. And then after 6 months, we sat down and we developed a vision statement, a mission statement, and a value statement. And then we developed a strategic plan. But we started with those 3 elements because they're the 3 elements that have to give you the boundaries and the parameters of what you want to do and how you want to do it. So that's how we did it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I put the poll results up, so you should see them. It looks like overwhelmingly, most of you all really make good use of your agency's mission statement, which is really, that means that you all have good mission statements, right? If you had bad mission statements that didn't sort of mean anything to you, you wouldn't be referring to them frequently in your work. So I'm glad to see that that's the case. So in our conversations, when we were sort of talking about what to talk about during this conversation, Lynn actually shared a process that the Massachusetts Department of Corrections went through, very similar to what you described, Mr. Beeler, where they developed a new mission statement, which is here, and then took the time to break it down into goals and tangible measures. I sort of took the liberty to identify within this mission statement what the value is, what the mission is, and what the vision is, right? So MADOC's mission is to promote public safety. That's the value, right? It's written right there that Massachusetts DOC values public safety by managing offenders while providing care and appropriate programs. That's the mission, right? Management, care, programming, with the vision of successful reentry into the community. That's sort of the end goal. That's what the DOC wants to see. Lynn, was that a fair breakdown?
Yes.
Okay.
Excellent.
And when this sort of new mission statement was unveiled, what were some of the reactions that you saw among your colleagues to this mission statement?
Well, actually, there was a lot of buy-in because the commissioner at the time brought in all of the department heads and wardens, and we developed it together. It was a day-long training with consultants, and it wasn't easy. There was a lot of arguments.
Oh yeah.
And about language, and and the like. But overall, I think at the end of the day, everybody said, okay, everybody can live with this. And so, you know, the decision to roll it out to the field included that every institution had to come up with goals in line with the vision statement.
Right.
And, you know, that's how we started.
Right. So I sort of laid it out here, sort of what that process looked like. So it sounds like facilities developed a measurable goal that was in line with that vision statement. After that, a plan was developed, identifying changes that were required to realize that goal. And then part of that also included how you measure progress toward the goal. How, you know, what are those performance measures look like? And then, of course, sharing progress, whether good, bad, or indifferent. And so, you know, it sounded like at the warden level that yourself and your colleagues were bought in, got it, you know, agreed, or at least lived with it. When it came back to bringing it to your individual facility, what were some of the reactions that facility-based staff had?
You know, I think initially, you know, staff want to know whether or not this is like real. You know, a lot of people would say, this too shall pass. Is this the newest thing? And so I think, you know, that's expected when anytime you're implementing something new, is there's always going to be that group of naysayers. Oh, there's just one more thing. It'll go away at some point in time. But, you know, so I tried to get our goals developed from the line staff up. So how I proceeded with it was I asked all of my managers to come to the next department head meeting with 3 problem areas in there that they felt the institution needed to address, and that they would get those problem areas with meetings with their staff. So we started from a problem identification. And from those problems, it was interesting that a lot of them were similar. You know, the education folks and the nursing folks and the correction officers were all saying the same things about, you know, what we needed to improve on. From there, we developed institutional goals. And in my opinion, you can't have a goal unless you know how you're going to measure it. So, you know, you have to come up with a way to measure the goal. So, you know, we had about 5 to 7 annually, but this was the one I think that was the most broad-based that we endeavored to attack. And that was to promote and provide a trauma-informed environment and obtain technical assistance to develop the plan. You know, it became infinitely, you know, I became infinitely aware that at the time, I had no idea what trauma-informed care was. I'd heard a lot about it from, you know, some of the mental health staff and some of the advocacy groups that I dealt with on a regular basis. So, you know, we decided, hey, if we're going to do this, we need to do it right. We needed to know what the heck we're talking about here. So if you want to go on to the next slide.
Yes.
So, you know, the first thing that I did is I reached out to SAMHSA, and I'm not sure if folks are aware what that is, but it's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. And I became aware through my call with them that they have technical assistance grants. So we obtained one of those grants, and it wasn't a lot of work. You know, it was just a letter signed by my commissioner, but they came up with a group of folks that came out to my facility for a 2-week period, provide training to all the staff, actually provided training to inmates, and provided us with peer support program. So they had ex-offenders available to us to come in and talk to the inmates about being peer supporters.
Wow.
And you know, I realized that this was a little bit bigger than I anticipated. So I developed a multidisciplinary trauma-informed steering committee. And so our population at the time was about 800 offenders and about 400 employees. So we developed a steering committee, and we involved every area of the institution. So there was a nurse, there was a mental health clinician, there was the librarian, we had a member of the teaching staff, line staff, housing staff, unit team captain, So I involved every area of the institution so that everybody had a sort of a piece of the pie and everybody knew what we were going. And we also revised all our service contracts and required them to do training on trauma-informed approaches. So, you know, the idea is that you get buy-in from staff by including them in the process and getting their ideas about how to move forward, their problems that they're having. When folks feel like they have a voice, I think you get that buy-in.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that you made it a point to include, you know, the kinds of disciplines that maybe wouldn't be obvious. Like you mentioned, the librarian, right? I imagine it'd be really easy to not think about including someone in that type of work as a part of this process. But the fact that you were able to identify that they are also an important part of sort of this community in your facility, I think is really wonderful. And you also talked about, or you shared with me, some of the ways that you identified that you were able to measure what progress would look like, right? Because something like trauma-informed care is kind of this like nebulous, like, you know, it's a little hard to succinctly define. And so therefore, it's also a little hard to define what success looks like, right? And so these were some of the things that you shared that you looked at as these programs were being implemented.
Yeah, and at the time we were, you know, really seeing a lot of self-injury and by the inmate population. And, you know, when we started this outlook, we were asking ourselves, well, what's going to be better if we do this? And what would we like to see? And so we came up with, you know, a listing of things that we wanted to improve upon. And I think every facility in the country would love to see their number of disciplinary reports go down, their numbers of uses of force, folks on mental health watch, folks self-injuring, suicide attempts, and assaults on prisoners and staff. So, you know, we focused in on some key performance indicators that would tell us, are some of these indicators going down with what we're doing? And across the board, we had reductions in all of those target areas.
That's amazing. And what do you attribute that to? Like, what do you attribute the success of all of these measures that you were doing? I'm sure there's a number of things, but what would be like your one thing was like, that's why that worked?
I think a huge one was the peer support program. So when the National Trauma Center came out, we hand selected long-termers and lifers to serve as peer supporters. And they had to indicate and they had to apply for it. And we certainly picked those inmates that had a positive effect on the institution. But we trained them. We started having them go down to our admissions area at night. When folks were coming right in the door, they introduced themselves. They talked about the prison, what you can expect. We had prisoners going to inmate orientation, talking about the peer support program, so that when inmates were in a crisis, instead of acting out, they could ask to see a peer supporter. And peer supporters also did a monthly newsletter, slid under everybody's door on the 11 to 7 shift. And it included everything from recipes that you can make from the inmate canteen to how to access them, to a highlight on a program. And that's where the librarian came in. She was actually took on the newsletter. So she had a small group of inmates that she worked with to do the newsletter. So it really did involve all areas in the institution. And so if I could point to one thing, I would say that peer support program took a lot of heat off line correction officers and housing units. It gave them somebody to say, hey, I know who you can talk to kind of set you straight on this.
I love that so much because I am a huge proponent of the peer support model. It's something that, you know, as a former victim advocate out in the community, you know, the Rape Crisis Center model really is based on peer support. And so I know it works in the community, and I love to hear how it works in facilities as well. And so, and I am consistently hearing from, you know, facilities that have those kinds of programs, it's really, really, really successful. There's something about being able to talk to someone who is your peer rather than someone who is a clinician about some of the issues that you might be dealing with. There's a little bit more understanding. It's a little less clinical, a little more accessible. I think that that's really wonderful. I think the other thing that you shared that was interesting to me is how you shared the progress widely, good or bad, right? And you talked about publishing the performance measures so that anyone could take a look at them. Did you find that folks were really invested in seeing the numbers go down? That as they went down, people got really motivated?
That did occur, and I also used to go to our weekly in-service program. So every correction officer is required to get in-service hours annually. And so every Friday of every week, I spent an hour with that group that went through training that week. And I took that opportunity to talk about our goals for the year and where we stood. And I would put the performance measures up on a chart. As it was part of my PowerPoint presentation, it gave them an opportunity to ask me questions. And I want to say that not every indicator would go down every month. Everybody has those times, and it's 90 degrees in the summer, you're going to have some incidents. Yeah. And so we would track those increases, and I would talk to the staff about, what do you think we can be doing better? How can we improve? So when I talk about publishing that information and discussing it widely, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's not just, oh, right, we're doing a great thing. It's giving that staff, the staff, an opportunity to say, hey, boss, this is a problem, and these are some of the things I think we should be doing better.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that, that you were able to see those kinds of reductions. But I also know that, and this is something I relate to as a victim advocate, is, sometimes you don't see those successes. Like you don't, people leave your facility. You don't know, am I going to see them again in a couple months? Am I never going to see them again? And Eric, I haven't forgotten about you, because I remember a story that you shared recently that I think is a perfect example of the fact that sometimes we don't always get to see the success of our work inside our facilities, but that sometimes you have very random bump-ins with folks that are able to remind you that actually the work you do is successful. I wonder if you would mind talking about the woman you bumped into at CarMax.
Sure. I mean, I have a little story first.
Okay, go for it. Yeah.
What Lynn was sharing made me think about peer support, and I'm a huge advocate for that as well. We had an individual one evening that we got a court order to perform a medical procedure on. It was dialysis, and the person was very reluctant. And I mean, we were going to have to put restraints. So use of force is going to, cause us to write a report, use, cell entry team, gear up for that, restrain them, get a medical restraint, et cetera, to be able to do that, to enforce that court order. Instead of doing that, we discussed, as a team, what is an approach that we can use for this individual. And the peer support part of it came where we asked her, the individual, who would you feel comfortable with to be in the room to have, during this dialysis? And the individual, told us who was, close to her, et cetera. And so we got that person. Long story short, because we used peer support, we had a multidisciplinary team to discuss alternative actions instead of the restraints and cell entry, et cetera, use of force. The person went in there, no issue, no reports had to be written, no force had to be used. It was very successful on having the peer support provided. So I wanted to share that because it reminded me of using peer support.
Can I ask how that idea came? Like, whose idea was that? Like, what if we, asked someone to join in the room? Where'd that come from?
It just came from this collection of the people that were present.
The hive mind, yeah.
yeah, we just talked about, what impacts this person. And I think I asked a lieutenant that was present, I says, who is she close to? Who does she, bond with in the housing unit? And they said so-and-so, and then another, a clinical person said, well, that person has a good rapport, as far as behavior and talking people down, et cetera. So it was a collective approach. So it's multidisciplinary, and the medical director, nurse was involved, et cetera. So, we came up collectively. I think, sure, when you get multiple heads together, light bulbs come on, you come up with fresh ideas, and it was all through generative dialogue.
Yeah.
So, I don't know that one person really can take credit. I think it was just because it was so collaborative, and we were willing, instead of using force and having restraint, we said, let's pause for a moment. How else can we do this? Yeah, we have a court order. We can make her do it. But why do we want to fight that? And she's the person's going to be non-compliant, et cetera. So a very successful story right there.
I love that.
So the story about, CarMax, I went into CarMax, checking things out, didn't plan to buy a car, anything. My spouse and I went to an area, they told us to go sit in the lobby area while they were doing an assessment on what we were reviewing. And during that time, the place looked like, it was it wasn't holiday, it was weekend, I believe it was, but it looked like McDonald's at lunchtime. It was just packed with people. And so that was one of the things I just wanted to get turned away. I said, look, I don't want to do all this, but I said, we'll hear them out. And we noticed a young lady with a couple of kids, young kids, one in a stroller and one was in her on her hip that she was carrying around. And she had looked at me a couple times like she knew me. And then, nothing was said. Went to this lobby area and sat down waiting for, a decision to be made. And she was in the same lobby, and there was really nobody else, people walking through the lobby. But she finally spoke up and asked, sir, I know you look familiar, and, where do you work? And I knew right away. I said, well, she must know me from because it's corrections. That's my career. And I said, well, I work in the Department of Corrections. And she goes, I knew it. That's where I know you from. And said, you were warden at such and such place. And I said, yeah. And obviously I didn't recognize her because she was not in an inmate uniform. She was made up, not like inmates do in prison. They don't get all the time to make up, et cetera. So I didn't recognize her, but she took a moment and said, I just want to let you know that I made it. I'm on the path. I'm enduring. I'm making a difference. I've come out. She said, I've gotten married. As you can see, I got a couple kids, and successful career, family, et cetera. And she just says, it made a difference that I think I may have said a few things to her, not a long discussion, but it was just in passing of, hey, I believe in you. You're more valuable than this. You got a potential, you can make it. And she said the staff members that said that to her, she appreciated. And the ones that didn't, she just, said, ignored them. But she really appreciated the fact that, those staff that took a moment and gave her some encouragement made a difference. And to hear that on the outside, again, I didn't recognize her at the time, but it just really instilled that, or renewed or charged that hope, because that's what we're all, to me, we're engaged in, is to help other people to be better. And right there, just kind of stoked that fire, renewed that commitment to say, yeah, this is a purposeful work. This is why we do it, to see people happy, successful, making a difference, in their life.
I love that. Thank you. And, I think hope can come from a lot of different places. It can come from performance measures, Lynn, like your experience, and it can come from stories like the one that you shared. And I've been thinking a lot about hope lately in preparation for this conversation, and I've decided that I think hope is kind of like food, and every once in a while you get hungry and you need to get fed. And a story like that, I mean, that's food, that's nourishment, right? Like you just served us up a meal. And so, we talked a little bit earlier about the hope for the field. And I want to pose a question to the two of you, Lynn and Eric, and then of course to anyone who's listening and would like to be a part of the conversation, is how do you maintain hope? And I think even more importantly is how do you inspire it in others? How do you inspire it in your staff? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? How do you maintain hope for yourself and inspire it in others?
Well, when I was working, one thing that always worked for me is an opportunity to go to a training program like this or a training session like this. And it would always generate different new ideas to sort of keep me going. I think sometimes you get into that day-to-day and it's tough to pull yourself out of it sometimes. And, I want to go back to what Mr. Beeler had to say early on is, you can't do it from your office. You got to do it from being around staff and the offender population and, trying to address their needs. And you always got to be figuring out a way to get staff on board and for, making sure that you're available, approachable, present, and moving everyone forward. That is your job as the leader of the institution. It's to keep people moving forward.
I love that. Thank you. Eric, do you have any other thoughts on
Yeah,
inspiring
there's-
hope in others?
I mean, there's a couple acronyms, or at least one that I'll use, and it's the ABCs of the abundant life. And I won't quote because my memory is so bad. Some of the statements that I know about this acronym, but A is attitude. And to me, attitude is everything. And the one person that gets to choose our attitude is ourselves. And I'll share with you what a staff member said about attitude. It was great. They said, a bad attitude is like a flat tire. You can't get anywhere until you change it. So,
wow.
I mean,
I like that.
A is attitude. We choose it. And we got to, show that we've got a good attitude. B is, it's belief in yourself, belief in the principles that you stand by, and then finally courage to stand up for who you are and what you believe in, and the courage to, show that belief in others, that, they're valued again, and believe in them, stand up for the, the courage. And that's what leadership is about. You can look around at times, the courage is, well, you're on your own. You're being a leader, you're on an island at times. And so that's, the ABCs: pick your attitude, believe in your principles, have the courage to stand up for it. The other piece I'll say is, model what you believe in. Back to what you said, you got to, walk the talk, model the way, connect with your people. Embry was, I think he nailed that. Talking about connecting with your people, getting out, show them that you love them, show that you're vulnerable as a leader. And I gain a lot from that, hey, take ownership that, hey, we all make mistakes. And to have a leader own up to that, hey, look, no, it's a bad decision. I was wrong on that. Staff will follow that. People will follow that. And then finally involve everyone. It's what we've been talking about, stakeholders. Involve everybody that you can, inmates, family, community members, all your staff, every department, etc. So model, connect, and involve. Those are some principles, on building hope and having that vision. That's some of the things that I would share with the group today. I'm really impressed with what Mr. Beeler and Embry said. Spot on. You got to love your people. It's simple as that. So.
I love that. And we do have some folks that put some thoughts in the chat that hope comes from being knowledgeable and confident. Inspiring it comes from being approachable and involved in the facility as a whole. I feel like that's something that I've heard a lot from folks on the task force and just folks in the field, wardens, talking about the need to, not be behind a desk as much as possible. I'm sure that's easier said than done, but to prioritize being out in the facility and being a person, out in the world. Mr. Beeler wrote about hope being critical and sending handwritten notes. And I love that you said, and yes, I sent notes to both staff and offenders. A handwritten note is a really lovely gesture. Just shows that you're thinking about somebody. Mr. Ricketts said, hope comes from these peer interactions, finding out that, you're not the only one. There's other folks that are struggling with some of the same issues, being able to talk with someone, absolutely 100%. We've got a Desmond Tutu quote here from Mr. Van Gorder. Hope is being able to see that there is light despite all of the darkness. Wonderful. I love all of that. And does anyone have any other thoughts about maintaining hope or inspiring others?
This is Monique Hubbard-Pickett from the Nevada Department of Corrections.
Hello,
And
welcome.
I would like to say that just to be on board with what everyone's saying, and that we can continue to inspire hope in others when we allow our staff to believe that they are a part of a change of a greater good. I think a lot of times when we do trainings, at least this has been my experience, it's all, and obviously security is our highest priority. However, we can maintain better security when you can have a decent conversation with somebody versus talking down to somebody. So when you try to inspire your staff to say, listen, we are a part of the greater good. And when we help just one person make a decision to make a change in their life to do something differently, we make the community safer. And so since our goal is to make the community safer, I think when we try to inspire in them that, listen, you can be a part of that change, you can be a part of making the community safer because of how you engage with someone, how you inspire someone to do something different. Our officers are supposed to be examples of what to be. And so if we continue to inspire them and say, listen, when you walk around, you are the example of what they should be. And then you are going to show and inspire someone to be a better person or make a better decision. That way our streets or our homes are safer. So I think putting that message out, saying, listen, you can be hopeful that things will be better because you're a part of the change.
Ooh, that was a meal too. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate too that acknowledgement that, what happens in a facility has direct impacts to the community at large, and not just because folks will leave the facility and go back home to their communities for that reason as well, but also because, staff are in the communities coming in and out as well. You got families, friends coming to visit in and out of facilities, and, the walls are only physical barriers, right? I think the spiritual barrier is not there, right? The one impacts the other for certain. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Any other thoughts that anyone would like to share? Dawn says, I love to hear that. Me too. That was wonderful. Kind of in line with what we were just talking about, is making sure to consider your stakeholders, and really understanding that, the decisions that you all are making as leaders, again, are going to impact all of these various people, but all of these various people are also resources that you can use. And I want to encourage all the wardens that are out there listening, to reach out to your local advocacy organizations, to reach out to your partner agencies, your community members, whatever that might be, to invite them in, to get ideas from them, to let them share their knowledge with you, and vice versa as well, right? It can't be done individually. It can't be done by one person. It can't be done by one facility either, or one leader. It has to be a collective. The work has to be done collectively if we're going to get to that place that we want, which is that community safety that you talked about earlier. Ooh, we got some Dostoevsky. The degree of a civilization in a society can be judged by entering its prisons. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Whew, beautiful. So finally, just to kind of wrap things up a little bit, in thinking about sort of what you want your vision to be and how you communicate that, here's just a few sort of checklists to think about, right? It needs to be easy, simple to communicate. Public safety, community safety, right? Has to be directive. It has to guide all aspects of facility operations and decision making. So, you know, if you're thinking, okay, how do I implement this policy? Okay, is this going to make the facility safer, right? I feel like that is an example of how a vision of safety can influence decision making. Inspirational. I love, Monique, what you said about, you know, inspiring others and getting folks involved. I think that's super, super powerful. Positive, right? It's all about communicating the possibilities, right? We know there are a lot of problems. There are also solutions. Good things are possible. And it should be bold, a big idea, something like safety, right? That everyone can get behind. And something that calls people to action, right? You know, it's so easy to think about, you know, work as a job, right? And not so much a career or a purpose, like what Mr. Aldridge was talking about, having purpose-driven work. I feel called to action every day, you know, especially right now when I'm getting to be a part of these conversations, and I hope that those of you listening are as well. We do have some time for questions. If anyone has any questions for Lynn or for Eric or for any of us, or any thoughts that they would like to share, now's the time. And if not, that's fine too. Eric and Lynn, do either of you have any sort of parting words that you'd like to share?
I'd just like to commend those that have, you know, participated both orally and in writing through the chat. I've been inspired today. I've been fed, like Jessica shared, you know, we got some food today. You know, and it's good rubbing shoulders with this group. I get polished that way. I mean, it's kind of, we're all diamonds in a rough. And so, you know, I've got plenty of blemishes. And so I just want to, you know, commend everyone. I appreciate the interaction today. And, you know, I'm grateful for that because, again, it gets us where we're, you know, knocking off those blemishes. Thank you all.
Thank you.
I just want to say something really quick.
Yes, please.
This is my first time, and I actually found this very inspiring. Thank you for all the feedback. I think I learned quite a bit today, and I can't wait to keep on doing this with all of you.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. And Angela, thank you as well. I'm so touched. Lynn, did you want to say anything?
No, I just want to second what Eric had to say. I was really, really delighted with the number of folks today and the number of participation that occurred. You know, I think we're stronger together. Sometimes wardens and superintendents feel all alone. You don't get to vent to anybody. And, you know, this is a great opportunity to build some camaraderie and share ideas. So, you know, hope to see you all next month.
Speaking of which, as I mentioned earlier, we are always looking for ideas or folks that want to get more involved. Our website is right here. Our email is right here. This little QR code that you see on the screen will take you, I believe, to our website. If not, to a place to sign up for the newsletter. Either way, go ahead and take it. We have some questions here about getting a copy of the facility values of this presentation. We are recording this right now, so we will be sending out the recording, and we can send out the slides as well. Can we have a list of everyone and their contact information? If folks want to share their contact information, please do so in the chat. I'm not sure if there's a way for me to share that with everybody. So folks are welcome to having their information shared. Please go ahead and do so now in the chat. We will be having our next leadership summit on April 7th, same time. This little QR code here will get you to the registration sign up to do that. I would also encourage folks, as I mentioned before, to go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. We have a monthly newsletter that we send out to folks that are signed up. That's another way to get involved and to keep up to date with the stuff that we're working on. I see folks are putting in their contact information. Thank you so much. And I can actually, for those of you who put that in, we can send this out to everyone. I just didn't want to send anyone's out if they didn't want it to be shared. I do want to just really quickly acknowledge that Arnold Ventures is funding this project. Thank you so much for making this possible. And that is it. That is the end of our session. I am happy to stay until 11:30 my time, whatever time it is on the East Coast. Otherwise, to field any more questions. Otherwise, I really appreciate everyone's time. And thank you so much for serving up a meal of hope. Really appreciate it.